Well, hello. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for joining me for this lecture where we're going to be talking about promotional strategies, very specific, or more specifically, push versus pull strategies, which are two common promotion strategies that are utilized. Typically doesn't work like an either or strategy. Usually it could be a combination of the two, but for purposes of just establishing a baseline, we're going to talk about what these strategies are. So to make this a little bit easier to understand, I'm going to start by just kind of drawing a supply chain, at least as best as I can draw a supply chain, which isn't fantastic. So we're going to display this just like it would in terms of being vertical. So we're going to start with the producer at the very bottom here. And I guess we'll do a box, which is about all I can do. And then we have a wholesaler or a wholesale business. And then next we'll put a retailer. And then we're going to go with a consumer. So this is a pretty simple supply chain. If you've studied marketing at all or just familiar with the distribution of goods, you know that a good has a specific path that it takes from where it's produced to where it's consumed. And so, if you were to look at this, wouldn't be perfect for like orange juice, for example, but if you were to use that as kind of an example, you would say, well, the producer maybe is a farm, and then it goes to a manufacturer where there's a production process that takes place. Maybe it goes to a wholesaler where it sits on pallets, and then those pallets get moved to different locations and then makes its way to a retailer like a Walmart or a Target or a grocery store, and then it ends up in the end consumer's hands or in their refrigerator where eventually it gets consumed. And so this would be kind of a supply chain. Now, talking specifically or first about what we call a push strategy, how I would utilize this is promotion is all about ultimately getting our product, communicating and educating and influencing purchasing decisions. So if I were to use a push strategy, what I am trying to do is I am trying to push my product to consumers. Down or up, let's say, upstream all the way to consumers. And so how that might work is maybe, depending upon what I'm selling, but you can apply this literally to all situations, is I might incentivize each party in the supply chain to move it to the next one. So what I might say, if I'm the producer, is I might offer the retailer a, let's say like a chargeback, or something similar, where they get a percentage back for the items that they sell. So they're incentivized to put my item on the shelf, and then I'm hoping that because it's placed prominently on a shelf, that consumers are going to purchase it, and then I'm going to sell more of whatever item this is. And I can do this anywhere on the chain, right? So if I'm the producer, I can incentivize the wholesaler, or I can incentivize the retailer, or vice versa. So I'm just basically trying to push my product through the supply chain by getting it into the hands of each of the people. So I'm trying to motivate these people to ultimately move it upstream to consumers. Now, this is one strategy that you can happen. And usually a push strategy is more effective when you have some kind of sales personnel to actually assist in pushing the product upstream. Because you need someone to not only offer the incentives, but do the follow-up and make sure that the product is going to get ultimately to the place that it needs to be and persuade those that are involved in the chain. You'll have a lot of promotional materials and those types of things. And that's very, very common. An example of this, this is pretty easy to resonate with, is pharmaceutical reps who represent obviously a pharmaceutical company. And they, of course, are fairly aggressive, I suppose, in courting doctors and other people in the medical field to try to get their blessing on whatever pharmaceutical that they are selling, and then get that into the hands of consumers. That would be a push strategy. So getting in the room with doctors and buying lunches and buying everybody in the office coffee to get on kind of the good graces and get in front of a decision maker, and then hopefully get your product to the end consumer. So that's a push strategy. Again, it sounds bad, but it's a very common strategy to utilize in general because ultimately we want to get our product to consumers. Another strategy is what we call a pull strategy. And this works kind of the opposite way. So again, I'm going to go ahead and map out a brief supply chain. So we're going to start with the consumer. And then we're going to go with a retailer. We'll go ahead and keep it consistent just for kind of comparison purposes. And then we have a wholesale company. And then we have a producer. And again, still, we want to move our product from the producer, and it's going to go to the wholesaler, and then the retailer, and then the consumer. And again, for purposes of these examples, we're assuming that we are the producer here. So either we are going to kind of push our products through the supply chain, through incentives and through persuasion and those sorts of things to get it to consumers, or we're going to use a pull strategy. So the way a pull strategy works, it's the exact opposite. Now, it doesn't mean we start on the consumers and work our way down. What it means is that we're actually going to skip all of these people, and we're going to kind of come this way, and we are going to target consumers. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to increase demand for our product. And this is going to take a couple of forms. So this can be promoting, advertising my product through television ads, through radio. This can include using Instagram and social media to target consumers. And what I'm trying to do is kind of create this buzz, create this demand for the product. And then now consumers are going to retailers and they want this product. And then the retailer communicates with the wholesaler and says, hey, I need these. Can you find them? And then the wholesaler pursues the producer. Now that's a perfect example. It doesn't always necessarily work out like that. And like I said at the beginning of the lecture, usually there's a combination of strategies. You're using these in tandem, typically not either or. They are not mutually exclusive, but a pull strategy is beneficial because instead of trying to just get your product in front of consumers and hoping because it's there, it's going to sell in some way, or hoping because doctors have access to it, they're going to promote it. What I'm doing is I'm trying to create demand on the consumer level, so maybe they ask for it. Now, if you think about it from a pharmaceutical standpoint, since we use that example under a push strategy, pharmaceutical companies do also use a pull strategy because they advertise a lot of their pharmaceutical drugs, at least here in the United States, where we've got a little bit less restrictions on that versus folks over in Europe. And you can, it's talk to your doctor about drug X, whatever that might be. That's a pull strategy. The pharmaceutical company is trying to create some sort of demand so that you, in turn, kind of pull the product through the supply chain. And this is utilized in a lot of different areas. But again, it usually goes hand in hand with advertising directly to consumers. And advertising is, of course, very broad and can take the form of a number of different medium. But it is commonly used with this type of strategy, giving out samples, free trials, those sorts of things are all kind of pull strategies. They're all designed to try to facilitate demand in some way. Now, again, the reality is that typically these two strategies are kind of being used at the same time, because what you don't want is, you don't want to rely solely on one, because that can be problematic, right? If you're using solely a pull strategy, you're really dependent upon consumers kind of vouching for you and moving this through the chain. If you're dependent upon a push strategy, well, your product is getting to the final point, but unless the consumer has legitimate demand for the product, then that's where it's going to die, unfortunately. So you'll see that many larger businesses that have a lot of resources are going to invest in both strategies to try to increase the likelihood of their products being sold. Now, but if you're a small business, you might say, well, which one am I going to do? And usually for smaller businesses, typically a pull strategy is most effective at the beginning. And that's really because it's hard to, without any data, to convince wholesale businesses and retailers to work with you unless you've already got some proof of concept and proof that the product will sell. So many businesses, and this is why technology has made it so that it's a little easier to execute a pull strategy, because any business can sign up for an Instagram account or an account on TikTok or whatever social media platform that your consumer uses, and can instantly have a direct relationship. We can promote via email, and that has become very inexpensive as far as communication. So using a pull strategy isn't as expensive as it used to be, when really your only viable option was running a television ad that completely removed a lot of people from the equation altogether. So as we kind of finish up and wrap up this lecture, again, I want you to take away a couple things. One is that these strategies are not mutually exclusive. When you think of push strategy, I want you to think of someone trying to push a product and pushing that through the supply chain, right? Incentivizing each person along the chain to move the product to the next stage. And with the pull strategy, I want you to think of creating demand at the very end user, which would be the consumer. And as a result of that, them literally wanting this product and encouraging retailers, which in turn pulls the product through the supply chain based upon the demand. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Take care.